Good evening. It's Graham Healy from Rise Up Australia, Brisbane, 2025. And I'm going to not change, but I'm going to add a domain name in called Wake Up Australia. Now, in the background here, I've got Jonathan Cahn, who again completely debunks Tucker Carlson. Now, unfortunately, you've got politicians in Australia, you've got so-called freedom people that did well during COVID, including some politicians, that now the masks have been ripped off. We find out that they're totally anti-Semitic. Some of them are Christian, some of them aren't. The trouble is, if you're anti-Semitic, or I call them anti-Jew, so we don't confuse the Semitic word, you're actually not really a Christian. Interesting. So, Jonathan Cahn's probably, I would say, the most authoritative figure worldwide in historical connections between, the Jewish people, Israel, and Judeo-Christian values. He's I think I use the word, he's a Christian Jew. I'll use that word more appropriately, because when I say Masonic or Mosaic Jew, it sounds like the Masonic Lodge stuff. So he's a Christian Jew, and he understands the Torah, which is the Old Testament, and the interconnection through to the New Testament. The bottom line is simply this: the Old Testament concealed is the New Testament revealed. So Jesus, as far as Christianity is concerned, and remember, Jesus was a Jew, right through Scripture, the prophets prophesied about Jesus coming, especially in the book of Isaiah. So, if you really want to get a summary of and a total debunking of the likes of Tucker Carlson and anyone else in his ilk, a few Australian politicians I can think of immediately, this gives a great summary. And if you want to go down further, just as I go through this a little bit, here's Wake Up Australia. Now, I sort of borrowed this concept from one of the guys on Facebook, but the real issue in Australia is terrorism. There's no question about that. We can talk about fuel. We can talk about the rising costs of living, and how much a house cost 10 years ago, and all that sort of stuff. It really hinges off mass immigration, and then what we've imported here as a problem. Really, the problem is mass immigration, but it's not just mass immigration from countries that aren't against the ethics of Australia. It's immigration regarding the Islamic countries, who definitely don't assimilate. End of story, forget it. Their objective is to build up numbers high enough so that they can take over, basically, implement Sharia law and all the rest of it, just like they're doing overseas, especially in London would be a good example. So if you want to be overrun by Islamic fundamentalists, and when you say fundamentalists, there's no such thing as a fundamentalist believer of Islam. They either believe everything that's written in the Quran, all 150 verses of jihad, they take that literally, or they don't. So, that's coming straight from the word or the mouth of the so-called president of Turkey, who would represent probably the, a fairly good cohort of Islam. And then, of course, you've got to look at what we're doing now with Donald Trump and Netanyahu in Iran. If they weren't doing what they're doing now, taking out the terrorist regime, which, by the way, has got nothing to do with the Persian people or the real Iranian people. It's a foreign occupation, basically, of Iran by Arabs that aren't what you call Persians. and that happened in 1979, and including including the whole Gaza thing. I mean, the whole Palestine thing was made up by Yasser Arafat and his terrorist group. We'll look it up on the net. I think I've got some articles on here, or go onto the Facebook or somewhere to get those from Mark Rowland, especially, is very good with all that. But here we have the mask as Islam. We've got terrorism, free Palestine, which equals basically supporting Hamas. So Albanese and his government support Hamas. That's the bottom line. Anti-Israel and Zionism and all this crap basically about Zionists under the bed. You might as well put them up in the category with Hamas, because that's a Hamas propaganda. So that was the propaganda that Hitler came out with in World War II. And that's a propaganda that's being resurfaced in 2005, 2025, 2026. Labor, Greens have an unholy link with Islam, just like Albanese went into the Lakemba Mosque, which is the seedbed of terrorism, actually. So he goes in there, submits himself to the spirits that hang around in that mosque. And of course, they jumped up and basically attacked him. But he'll put a different spin on that. But we all saw what happened, didn't we? And the amazing silence on the million murdered in Iran of their own people by the Ayatollahs since 1979, 1 million plus. And that's from reliable sources. And suddenly they come out with this BS term called Islamophobia, which is really a deceptive term. It should be really renamed as Islam a realism. So the realistic version of what Islam's all about, literally 150 verses of jihad in the book, death to infidels, death to Jews, Christians, death to everyone who isn't in the death cult, basically. So you've got these characters in the Lakemba Mosque. This is what they read every time they turn up there. So that's why you get that violent reaction when they don't get what they want. And then they see Albanese as this weak, insipid. It's embarrassing to call him a leader. And then, of course, you go onto the website, thereligionofpeace.com, and of course that's really the exact opposite is the case. But there's 49,123 acts of terrorism since 9/11, and that keeps a full account of what's going on there. So the other thing is, I suppose I'm just going down. I won't go too long on this, but you'll see why I've written down here, why the rise of one nation. And I've done a video there as well. Pauline's got the blessing from the Lord. So you can listen to that video. Netanyahu, few of my associates send me the statement from Netanyahu, that he recently, they take one little snippet out of what he said and then create an anti-Netanyahu video. So I've debunked that totally, totally misquoted when Netanyahu quoted the lessons of history. And they're talking about basically, Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan actually ruled most of the ancient world, and he ruled it by force, really. A bit like what Islam's done over the last 1400 years. So what Netanyahu was saying basically was that, you can't resist terrorism in a passive way. I mean, the Jews did that in World War II. They all just walked into the gas chambers and millions were exterminated. That's the genocide that all these other characters try to talk about. And that's not ever going to happen again, right? Likewise, with Australia or any other Western nation that doesn't seriously resist Islam, and it's undermining what I call the Trojan horse effect in Western society, the same thing will happen to you. You will eventually get dominated by them, very much like what's happening in the UK at the moment. The UK is in a terrible mess. I don't know whether it'll come back from. It's just about lost. So you've just got to remember, Islam has been a very violent and aggressive death cult basically for 1400 years. This is nothing new. Just check your history. History repeats itself. So we just go on a little bit further. That's the book that Netanyahu was quoting from, which gives a full, quite a comprehensive study on, wars and what's happened over the years and various, cultures and what have you. The other thing that I will see if I can bring up here to back up what Jonathan Cahn did to debunk Tucker Carlson is Sid Roth. Now, Sid Roth, he runs that TV show, It's Supernatural. Again, he's another Jew who's also become a Christian. And he is very, very good, Sid. So he's also challenged Tucker Carlson, basically. Tucker doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ignorant. He thinks he's a Christian, but doesn't understand, the full depth of being a born-again Christian. I think Tucker might be just, traditional Christian or something that's just accepted the Lord through mental assent rather than being born again and what have you. But Sid, again, backs up what Jonathan Cahn said. So my advice to anyone who, let's just bring this back up again, blog feed, just go to the original one. Oops, we'll just go. And by the way, go onto my website, Rise Up Australia Brisbane 2025. I will have Wake Up Australia as well shortly. But I found that Jonathan's covers every single subject that people ask about. Is it the Jews? Are they the real Jews that are there? Are they the descendants of Abraham that are actually there now? Surely they're in some other, they're some other crossbreed or something. It's absolutely, completely ridiculous. So anyone who doesn't understand the right that the Jews who are in Israel now have, according to God himself, well, just listen to this video. If you claim to be a Christian, listen to this video and just listen to the scriptures that have been quoted, and there you go. So that's Graham Healy over and out. I just thought I'd do a quick summary of this because a lot of, as my different associates on my various Facebook platforms have said, these freedom people, for the guys that we were all meeting with in the COVID era, they suddenly have turned against Israel. Suddenly they're turning against, well, we never knew this before because that subject wasn't brought up much. It was all about, the jab and all the rest of it, which totally was wrong and morally wrong and all the rest of it. A lot of these people claim to be Christians as well, but the trouble is what we found that most of them are just like surface, I'm a Christian, but I'm not really a Christian, or they're a so-called freedom person, and then you find out underneath it all they're just some sort of new age cult type person. So, to all those freedom people that I used to know, what I suggest you do is repent. And basically just listen to the, Jonathan Cahn video that I've got on the website, and then you'll suddenly get a revelation. And if you don't get a revelation, I'm very sorry, you're on the dark side instead of the right side. It's simple as that. So no one's perfect, but when you get pointed in the right direction and you don't, wake up, unfortunately, the bottom line is this: if you curse Israel, now Israel's not perfect, it never has been in the scriptures. They copped a lot of punishment from the Lord himself, but they're the children, the original children of God himself. And the covenants, as Jonathan Kahn explains, the covenants were made to Abraham, which is the father of the faith. They're irrevocable. They're not changed because suddenly in 2006, a whole lot of different freedom people think that that's all changed, and Tucker Carlson seems to be some sort of authority on everything. Now, I saw Tucker Carlson when he came out to Australia, and I thought, well, he was great, actually. But the anti-Jewish subjects were never challenged, never spoken about. It was more the COVID thing and, the actual election that got, the loss that Donald Trump had, which was really a fixed election. That was the main conversation when Clive Palmer brought Tucker Carlson out here and Dr. Peter McCulloch, and there was a whole. It was very good, actually. I was impressed with Tucker there, but then when he came out with all this sort of crap that he's going on with now, I realised that he's on the wrong side of the fence and he's lost the plot. So hopefully others will not lose the plot accordingly. So that's Graham Healy over and out. Remember, very carefully read Genesis 12:3, and that's the eternal covenant, the eternal covenant that God made with Abraham, and that covers all people, including the Israeli people. And the Israel is the apple of God's eye, actually, at the end of the day. No matter what they've done in the past, they are still they're the descendants of Moses, for goodness sake, descendants of Aaron. And as Jonathan Kahn rightly says, they've done DNA testing on many people, including Kahn's done his DNA testing, and they can trace that DNA back to, I think Kahn can trace his right back to Aaron, the head priest with Moses. So good luck if you're trying to debunk Israel. You'll invoke a curse on your life. You'll invoke a curse on your family, and you'll invoke a personal curse. That's what'll happen. Now, that just reminds me, why is Pauline Hanson rising? This orange wave is rising in Australia. Yes, there's a patriot thing and all the rest of it. And yes, I see some good-looking little chick that's going on about, put Australia first, but she hates Israel and anything else. Good looking, but nothing between the ears, unfortunately. That sort of naive patriotism doesn't wash water with me. But why is Pauline and, the disgruntled Liberals joining, and Nationals such as Barnaby Joyce joining One Nation? Well, Pauline's inherited a blessing from the Lord. Why? Because she stood up for Israel. It's just pretty simple. Genesis 12:3 again. So Pauline stood up for Israel. She stood up for the victims of, 7th of October 2023. She stood up for the victims of Bondi, and she was welcomed by the Jewish community because they know she's genuine. And, guess what? She inherited a blessing from the Lord. That is why, that's the big picture. That is why One Nation is starting to become the alternative party in Australia. Now, does that mean Pauline Hanson's going to be the next Prime Minister? I don't see her as the Prime Minister, but I certainly see her as the watchdog of, basically the Australia's conscience. God is using her as a mouthpiece to just call it out like it is. And Barnaby Joyce is a very similar character. He calls it out like it is. Corey Bernardi calls it out like it is. And I also follow Bernie Flynn. He calls it out like it is. So you're getting the people who call it out, and Malcolm Roberts calls it out like it is. So you're getting this gathering of what I call the real, true blue Australians. So just enlighten this one again. One flag, one voice, one nation. And that's, to me, that encapsulates what Australia is all about. And I think of all people, Pauline represents that, and she has now inherited a blessing from the Lord. And I believe that even though I don't see her as Prime Minister, I certainly see her in a position of great influence in a newly formed government. Do I see Albanese going another 2 years? No, I don't. I've said that for 12 months now. I see a double dissolution and a referendum on free speech, and there will be a new government formed, and probably the Iran war will precipitate it. Always external circumstances change governments. So that's what I'm seeing. In the meantime, just remember, Jesus is Lord, and if you want to be blessed, you bless Israel. They're not perfect, but I'll tell you what, they're stopping the terrorists from coming to Australia. And certainly, I'd rather have Netanyahu in charge of the anti-terrorism. If you want to get the terrorists out of Australia, put Netanyahu in charge, and you see where they all run. Or do you want Albanese in charge, sitting down in the mosque as they abuse him and yell out genocide and all the rest of it? Is that what you want? Is that who you want controlling Australia? I don't think so. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Remember, at the end of the day, the Lord himself is changing the geopolitical scenario. You're watching what's happened with Donald Trump. I'm a Trump fan for way back, but not just a personal fan, but what he's doing biblically. It's all biblical what he's doing, including Iran is a big part of it. A big partner. King Cyrus, bless the Israeli people. Israel has a great relationship with the Persian people and has done since the year 538 BC. Look it up. It's all on my website. There's prophetic and political perspectives, not just political stuff. I can't stand the political stuff normally, but when you're tied in with biblical prophecies and what's happening on the geopolitical scene right now, it's like you're just reading out of biblical prophecy as we see it now, especially with Iran, and especially destroying the most hideous Islamic death cult of all time, i.e. the Ayatollahs and all these sort of characters. Okay, and as long as we can flush all them out of Australia as well, will really help, and that's coming. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Remember, Rise Up Australia, Brisbane 2025. Have a great day. Remember to love your neighbour, but the bottom line is that we are a Judeo-Christian country. Judeo-Christian. Jewish / Christian, it's inseparable. Inseparable. It's biblical. Read and listen to that. I'll go back onto this. We'll finish off on this. We'll just go back on this. Not read, but listen to the video by Jonathan Cahn, and you will be enlightened. And if you don't understand the connection between the Jews and the Christians, then no hope for you. You're automatically accursed by God. End of story. And if you want to write this scripture down, put it on your forehead if you like. Genesis 12:3. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be cursed. And even if you're not a Christian, the only country that's stopping Islam from taking over Australia and every other country is Israel, combined in with the US. Now, when all this political stuff happens, the double dissolution, everything else, we will perfectly align with what Donald Trump's doing and with Israel, as we did before we had a Labor government in this country. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. And just on passing, Bob Hawke was a great friend of Israel, and he was the last, in my opinion, was the last great Labor Prime Minister. I mean, he's got his faults too, and people point to different things. But I'll tell you now, back in the day, I voted for Bob Hawke in that particular era. And he was a great friend of Israel. So just remember that, you Labor characters, you woke Labor mob. Okay, Graham Healy over and out.